from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too. Welcome back to Music is Funny, I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another unnecessary and ridiculous intro.
Do you think that we should record a song this week since I'm fighting a cold? I think my voice sounds kind of good. What do you think?
You sound like you have a cold. Anyway, we got a special one for you today. We've gotten a lot of new followers lately that I'm thinking might not be familiar with a lot of our earlier episodes. So we're going to throw out sort of a greatest hits type thing today. It won't be all inclusive, but a lot of the people that we've had on that you might not have heard, we're going to give you snippets. So hopefully if you hear something you'll dig, you'll go back and listen to or watch the whole episode.
Hi, everybody that's been on.
Doug Stanhope. So, getting into music, what kind of music fan were you? Or casual listener? Were you into it as a kid?
I just say I hate music. I don't really listen to music. And when I had an iPod, if I would put it on at a party, it wouldn't be more than 2 random shuffle songs before someone said, "What the fuck is this? Who put this on?" I just say I hate all music so people can't judge me. When I did my first Comedy Central special, they said, okay, because you had to submit the material you're going to use. And I remember the phone call with the standards and practices. Okay, it looks great. There's just a few notes that we have. And that started like 40 minutes of you can't do this, you can't say that. You have to change that to something else. This is a real person's name. You can't say that. Like, it's just everything down the fucking line.
Yeah.
And then when I went to film it, Louis C.K., they film them in blocks. And I watched his set being filmed, and he's fucking cunt and shit. And like, how did you get away with that? They told me I couldn't. He goes, yeah, they tell you that, but then you ignore them and they bleep it out. And never, and he said, and never give them more. If you're doing a 30-minute special, don't give them any more than 33 or 34, because they're going to cut out your best shit. If they have nothing to go to, then if you just do 30, they're fucked. They have to air what you said.
That's genius.
Which I wish you had told me that before I did my set where I'm stumbling like a third grader. Can I say poo-poo? Did I say caca? Awful. I remember opening for the Edgar Winter Group at a biker bar in Billings. What's the drummer's name? Carmen Apiece.
Yep. Legendary.
He was sitting in as the drummer. I don't know if he's part of the band, but everyone was making a big deal about him. And it's all bikers. And this biker chick in the front row threw a beer bottle at me. It hits his drum set. And I see security coming at her. So I start doing the na, hey, hey, goodbye. And they just tapped her and asked her not to do it again. What the everyone get one free shot at the comic with a verbal warning? The fuck is that? And I ended up making out with her after the show.
Oh.
Well, you turned her.
How
That's
was
good.
it?
Oh, it's pretty gross. And I was actually with a girl who saw me doing it. I go, I just wanted to show I could win. The Bird Cloud shitty gig, one of the drunkest I've ever been as well. Well, we were playing in Atlanta, and they were down there, and I had 2 shows, one at the comedy club and then another bar the next night on the other side of town. So after the comedy club night, Ron White showed up with his tour van, and he has some mansion outside of Atlanta. He's, I'll come do a set on your show, but you got to promise to come back to my place afterwards, which he made it sound like it's right down the street. It was like 45, 50 minutes away in the tour bus, though. And I'll get you all back in the morning. And we partied our ass off. There was a heavy amount of drugs and relentless drinking till the sun came up. And then finally at 10 a.m., Ron White comes down and goes, yeah, y'all going to have to get an Uber or something. And I went, I thought we're taking the tour bus. Change of plans. We're out in some fucking golf course. It takes us hours to get Ubers to the place. Then we're maintenance drinking because we have to stay awake. And I did that show. I remember saying it on stage that if I was the type of comic to give refunds for a shitty show, this would be the one. But I don't do that. Just plowed through. I have no idea what I was saying. I was out of my mind, and it took days to recover.
I wanted to know, when's the first time you heard about Willie Nelson? What's your own personal Papa Willie experience?
Well, I guess sorry, I had to come up. I'm taking a piss.
Nice.
You're my fence.
So great.
Since this is a first for everything for you, this is the first time taking a
Looks
piss.
like you're peeing on us. But I really want to ask you, what was your first experience with him?
If we're the same age, I guess it was To All the Girls I Loved Before, which is a fucking horrible song. It's just terrible. It's almost as bad as Stevie Wonder, I Just Called to Say I Love You. It's like that caliber of bad. So like if when you're a kid and you hear that over and over and over and you listen to American Top 40 and you go, oh fuck, it's gonna be number one again. God damn it. So all he could do is go up from there. And then I remember like the whole Farm Aid tax thing. And so I don't know much of his music. I just know just it's been a staple. And then he just became the coolest fucking weed smoking old guy that didn't give a fuck about anything.
Yep.
And so, yes, he's loved. I wish you hadn't have brought it up because I would have never remembered To All the Girls I've Loved Before. Now you kind of put a fucking stain on his memory.
What's your favorite memory about my grandpa? I hate that fucking song.
She said she asked when I first became.
Yeah.
Should have said, when's the last time you thought about him? Ah, that was a nice thought. That was a pleasant one. But since you brought me into some triggering past, what was it?
Josh Wolf.
I remember I saw her at a spring break show when I was in college. And you know, when you're in college and you're drunk on the beach, you're thinking, I could probably get Joan Jett to fuck me.
Not knowing.
Not knowing at all. Not knowing at all. Yeah. Not knowing at all. So I made my way up to the front of the stage. I was greased up. I was looking good, man. I was like, she's not vibing.
Tanned, or
what's going on? She's not vibing at all. Yeah, and then my buddy was like, I don't think she's into you. I'm like, no, she's not. He's like, no, in general, I don't think she's
kind.
Yeah.
You're at all.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Oh, I was like, I'm up front.
Come on. Hey, at least give me
I'm
a look.
looking good tonight.
No.
Not it.
Sideways glance is all you get. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Good stuff. I had a moped when I lived in LA when I first got there, and I entertained at children's parties. And the person who owned the company made me drive in costume. He was like, you can't show up and change. And I was like, I own a moped, man. And he's like, so there's one time I was on my moped in a Peter Pan costume. And so my moped, the muffler broke, so it sounded like a Harley. So if you heard you'd turn down the street and it was me on a moped.
In a Peter Pan costume.
In a Peter Pan costume. So I'm sitting at a light, and I'm like, right? And in a Peter Pan costume, and a cop pulls up next to me, and he rolls down his window, and he goes, hey. And I go, yeah. And he goes, I was going to give you a ticket for no helmet, but looks like your life's going bad enough as it is. And he just drove away, and I was like, this just dropped the hammer on me.
That sounds like a Patrice line.
Yeah, he dropped a hammer on me. Yeah.
Well, also a helmet would have fucked up the Peter Pan look,
100%. I'm like, this is not. Peter Pan doesn't wear a helmet.
Make a three-cornered helmet. Come on now.
Come on, man. Get with it, dude.
Well, Seattle, you were right in the midst of the whole
punk rock.
Timing was probably grunge city right about the time you arrived.
I lived a tenth of a mile down the street from Cobain when he killed himself.
Oh my God.
I couldn't get to my house. So for 3 days, they had the street blocked off. I had a driver's license it was a New York driver's license. In order to get to your house, you needed to show you lived there because there were so many look-see-loos.
Oh God, I can imagine.
And so I had a New York, so I had to park away and walk to my house. But it was insane. It was insane. You know, I used to see him in a long trench coat mid-July sitting out by just sweating. Yeah, he was not a healthy dude.
Yeah.
It was a great time, though. You know, I ran and owned part of this place called El Lobo Loco, and it had an upstairs, downstairs. And one Sunday afternoon, I get a call from a guy. He was like, hey, I'm the manager for this band called Presidents of the United States of America. And they're just looking they want to play an all-age show. And can we use your basement? And I had never heard of them. I was like, that's a terrible name for a band.
They're never going to make it.
That's a mouthful. You know what I mean? But yeah, if you guys want to. And I'd never heard of them, but apparently the locals had. And it was like jammed. But it was such a crazy time. Chris, and I want to make, I'm pretty sure I got this right. But Chris Cornell's sister was the barista out in front of my place. And she had a voice from I'm like, what's happening in your family?
John Heffron.
Who female singers I've done stuff with that I thought were amazing.
Now, done stuff with. Do we want to clarify?
Performed in front of, open at a corporate event.
That's fine,
because
too.
those are
Performed.
different. Yeah,
No.
performed. Light Shizatsu massage. Yeah, facial tissue release. Whatever. No. Diana Ross was pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
She did in 40 minutes. I bet you she changed 13 times. I don't know how it's physically. It was amazing. She would do like these magic tricks where
let me do that.
and all you need is a
can't
curtain,
change quick enough.
and then you go, and then she'd come out of the curtain. She'd have a different.
Doing this.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing because people are like, what? And she didn't phone it in. I've worked with a couple, and I get it. I've done shows where you're just like, okay. I've done a corporate where like I'm just gonna stare at the back of the wall.
It happens.
I'm gonna do it. But I've seen some high level phoning it ins, which I'm not even telling the stories to crap on them, just that I'm amazed. I saw Rod Stewart do one, never seen this. Comes out in a helicopter, walks on stage. So I get off stage and they go, you are done at whatever, 8:07 and 22 seconds. You know, like I have a big clock. They're like, do not be on stage at 8:08 or whatever, 3:08.
Right.
You are done. Don't even finish a word.
Out.
When this thing gets right out, and I'm just
like, okay, gotcha.
And then I look and I leave, and then they had a place for me to stand. Literally, I go off to the stand. Host or somebody comes up, does something, I think. Helicopter was behind us. Goes, helicopter lands. It's a horrible helicopter noise. Helicopter lands. Rod Stewart gets off the helicopter, walks literally, he puts one foot down, grabs the mic. Almost the second he grabs it, Maggie May starts playing. Big like those clear karaoke machine monitors come up. But I think I got something to say to you. I just walk in, sang 4 songs. Didn't even do, hey guys, you guys seem like you're gonna get nothing.
No crowd work whatsoever.
Man, I think gets done. Mic back in. Helicopter just takes off and leaves. And I was just like, that guy just made $300,000 for.
Wow, I guess it's good work if you can get it.
My very first Tonight Show, Dolly Parton was the other guest.
Oh,
So I do this thing. I sit down, and the whole time I'm like,
Did you touch her boobs?
well, she touched my leg, and
With her boobs?
my dad with her boob. That's all she did. Yeah.
That's the first thing that's going to hit you when she walks in.
Yeah, you can't even. And I sit down, and she says something to me like after the set. I do it, and I sit down, and I just had like a out of body experience. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't throw up, I didn't memorize, I didn't pee myself. You know, I had all those
Did you
thoughts.
remember any of it, or was it kind of just a wash?
It was a wash. I remember saying one joke that I wasn't okayed or wasn't on the list. You know, just thought whatever just triggered into this. It was like
Is that okay if you do that? What happens?
No,
Do
they I saw the guy who goes through your joke list. I'm literally, so I'm talking like I'm looking at you guys, and I see him out of my, peripheral over here, and I see him take his head. There's like bleachers kind of is where the audience, and I see him just take his head and go, he just smashes his head against the bleachers like this far, or whatever. Yeah, I don't even know what the.
At least you weren't working blue at the time. That'd have been worse, I guess.
Well, I think it was. I think it was something. Well, not even blue. I don't remember how it went. It's not dirty.
Right.
Yeah.
You can say condomms. I
Right.
didn't say
They
what you do with them.
Right.
Yeah. So then I get done, and Dolly Parton's sitting next to me, and I'm so nervous. It's my mouth, and then there you go. We're gonna come back from commercial and talk to you more. Have another one or two jokes ready. And that wasn't the plan. So now I'm like, oh, and then.
But it's also a good sign.
Yeah. And then Dolly like leans over, right? And she puts her hand on my leg and she's like, that was really when you, and she just repeated one of my jokes. And I'm like, dang, I go, I've been to Dollywood so many times. And then the light came back on. And then I'm just like this. I'm like, my God, my last, now I'm thinking about Dollywood, and I'm not even.
I don't have any Dollywood material.
I don't even have, and then I did some like family vacation thingy, but coming back from a commercial, you saw her hand on my leg, and then, so you're like, we're on, and then she goes up, and my dad was like, did Dolly Parton touch you? Did she touch your leg? Do you realize what I would have done? Do you realize I would have killed my entire family when I was when I was a teenager or when I was in the army, and if Dolly Parton would have touched my leg? I'm like, yeah.
Jim Florentine.
Yeah, I remember that night because we went to New York City. We're in Lemmy was the music director on that comedy show. It was filmed in New Jersey. And they had to go back to New York City for something to film something. Lemmy and Jim Norton, like the open of the show. So I go, Norton's like, if you want to come in the limo with us, I'm like, yeah. So I go in a limo. This is before that metal show. And afterwards, Jim got dropped off or whatever. And it was just me and Lemmy in the limo. And I tell the limo guy, I just, give me a ride up to the Port Authority. I'm going to go home. And Lemmy's like, you going home? I'm like, I guess. He's like, you don't want to go to the strip club with me? I'm like, yeah, I'll go. He's like, yeah, let's go. Unless you want to go home. I go, no, let's go. Next thing I know, I'm hanging out in a strip club with Lemmy. It was beautiful.
We got to get to the crank call, the crank anchors thing. Explain how that even came about.
Well, so I'm living with Jim Norton at the time, and I got nothing going on during the day. So I just wait for telemarketers to call, and I would just pick the phone up and see how long I could stay on the phone with them. I try to stay on some side. They stay on for an hour, just, messing with them. And I remember Don said, he goes, you should tape that. He goes, well, first he goes, put it on three-way. I want to listen to this. It sounds funny. And he listened to one. He goes, dude, you're in a gold mine here. You got to start taping these. This is really funny. I didn't even know. I wasn't even a big prank call fan. I mean, I did prank calls when I was a kid. I didn't know. I thought it was funny to me. He's like, no. And I just bought a tape recorder. I hooked it up to the phone, and I made a CD. I produced it myself. I went to a local CD shop, got a bunch of them made, and then we dropped it off at the Howard Stern show. And he goes, all right, if it's Gary, the producer there, we knew him. He's like, all right, if it's funny, he'll play it. I'm like, yeah, he ain't going to play it. Whatever. There was like 1,000 CDs on his desk. I'm like, yeah, right. And the next morning he started playing at Howard Stern. He's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Who is this guy? I was sleeping. I'm like, there's no way he's going to play it. So I wasn't going to wake up early to see if he was. Yeah. I wake up at like 11 o'clock. There's like 40 messages on my machine. Howard Stern's talking about you. He's playing your comedy. I'm like, wow. And then like a month later, I was on the show, sitting in on the show.
Holy shit. And didn't I read that, weren't you like number 2 on the iTunes charts behind like the Backstreet Boys or something? Just from that?
No, that was on Amazon. Yeah. So before I was on, nobody knew who I was. I was just I made it up to just sell at some shows, get my name out there. So I remember my ranking before I went on Howard Stern was 282,487 on Amazon. My overall rank. Within one day, I was at number 2, right behind the Backstreet Boys in their heyday. And I would have went to number 1, but my website crashed. I didn't have enough bandwidth, and everyone was going to my website to listen to the tracks. So I put the tracks up there, and it just crashed, and my website was down. So I probably would have went to number 1. The Crank Anchors thing got really big, but I was doing voices. I was doing 2 different voices, so no one knew what I looked like.
Yeah.
could walk around. And I remember, you know, being in a movie theater one time when the thing was in its heyday, and these kids in front of me were doing the character I did. You know, and I'm like, oh man, I'm just standing there. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go tell them, hey, that's me. And like, yeah, right. Who are you, you weirdo? You know.
Well, speaking of kids doing your voice, when Eminem was doing it on the MTV Awards before you were even aware, I think that he knew about you. And apparently he was doing special ed and people thought it was some kind of weird code. Nobody had any idea what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he took a liking to Crank Yankers on the air. We did one season, 6 episodes, and we didn't know if it was going to get picked up. It didn't get great ratings the first season, and then we got caught wind that Eminem was a fan of the show. We're like, well, that's cool, you know. And then I remember tuning in the movie awards that year when 8 Mile came out. I guess it must have been, and he won an award. And he just did an impression of Special Ed, the character I did. And I'm watching it at home, like, oh my god! And the crowd had no idea. Nobody did because the show wasn't that popular. And then a couple of days later, we got a call like Eminem wants to be on the show and he wants to do phone calls with you. He likes your characters. And in like 3 days, I was in Detroit at Eminem's studio doing phone calls with him. And that pretty much got the show rolling again. Okay, Eminem's going to be on the show. We're definitely getting picked up.
That
we did a season 2 and a season 3 and all that other stuff.
Had to be mind bending for someone of that stature at that time. Biggest celebrity or biggest music guy in the world, basically.
Easily at that time. Yeah, he was, you know, and it was amazing.
So how long was it from when you put the first CD out until that? How many years had passed?
Maybe like a year and a half. That was it.
It's crazy.
We're hanging somewhere or whatever. And Rich Voss that was out there with us too, called us. He said, hey, Dice is hanging out at the Comedy Store. We're like, oh my God. So we rushed up there to go meet him. And, you know, Voss was talking to him and I went up to him like, hey, Dice, can I get a picture? He's like, no. He's always standoffish like that. That's just his thing. I go, what do you mean? He goes, no, I'm not taking a picture. I go, I can't get one picture. He goes, nobody tells me what to do. No. And me and Norton are just standing like, oh man. And he's talking to Voss and I go, you know, I'm going to give it one more shot. What do I got to lose? I'd probably never meet the guy again. I go, come on, Dice, we're comics from New York City. Can't just get one picture. We're fans. He's like, yeah. You guys are comics? And he's staring at me. I thought he was going to like punch. He goes, yeah, we'll take a picture. Why not? And then we just started talking, telling him we like his albums. He put out a couple of albums called The Day the Laughter Died, where he basically bombs.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the most punk rock moves I've ever seen a comedian make.
It's unbelievable. And me and Norton bonded over that. We listened to that on all those road trips constantly in the car. So we knew the whole album by heart. And we started telling him some of the jokes. He goes, I don't even remember saying that. He goes, why don't you guys go on stage tonight and do those jokes for me and my friends in the back? We go, yeah, all right. And he went over to the manager. He goes, put these 2 guys on, Jim and Jim. They're a team. And we got 2 microphones and we just did Dice's jokes. And the crowd had no idea what we were talking about either. They weren't his poems. They were just these, you know, dumb, you know, awful, no punchlines. And him and his friends are in the back howling at us. And the rest of the crowd's just staring at us. And then afterwards, he just took a liking to it. He's like, oh man, he goes, where are you guys staying? We told him the hotel. He goes, I might come by tomorrow if you guys want to go shopping with me. I'm like, yeah. And then in the morning, he came and picked us up. We went shopping with him for the whole day.
What was he shopping for? What was
like furniture and clothes. He loves doing that stuff. So we're like, I can't believe we're hanging with Dice. And then he goes, give me your numbers. And then Jim started opening for him, you know, on the road. And then I started open for him. We both started doing it and stuff. And it was great. I mean, I'm friends with him to this day.
So I got a question. Yeah, you and Jim doing the youngster thing, riding around. I'm sure you had some wild times touring around. What were the expectations when you did go on tour with Dice? Was the tour like wackiness? Did it meet your expectations? Like, I would imagine you would think, what's going to be like touring with a rock guy? There's going to be strippers. There's going to be blow. There's going to be all kinds of shit going on. And I would imagine maybe it's not that way.
No, there was none of that. You know, Dice is a straight-laced guy. He doesn't do drugs or, you know, smoke cigarettes. No, after the show, we'd be back like at the suite eating, you know, potato chips and snacks and getting food. Like that was the big, like we were in Vegas staying in the suite where Sammy Davis Jr., I forget the casino was called. Frank Sinatra, they all stay in that suite and we're up there eating snacks after the show. I'm like, no girls, no nothing. He was married at the time. No, but it was just great. Like we were all in about the show and his crowds were tough. So like, you know, we weren't there to mess around. You're playing in front of 3,000 people, and we're still not that established in our careers. We're like, oh man, this is unbelievable. And they were animals, those crowds. They just wanted to see Dice. So you really had to get them under your control for the time you were up there.
I've always been curious as a metalhead growing up in Jersey as a youngster. Are you allowed or not allowed to like Springsteen? I would imagine it's like, fuck Bruce Springsteen.
I hated him. I didn't like him. You were either on the side of Bruce Springsteen or you weren't. I thought he was a poser. Born in the USA came out. It was like, I don't know. I was never a fan. If you liked them, there was one of my friends that was a big metalhead. He met this girl and he started dating her, and she made him go to see Springsteen. I didn't talk to him for 6 months. I was that mad at him.
Mark Normand.
Born in Tremé, which is kind of a rough and tumble, like poor black neighborhood. And my dad bought a mansion that was falling apart. So he decided, I'm going to fix this up. It was like a midlife crisis. And we were the white family living in the neighborhood with a mansion. So everybody thought we were loaded. So we got robbed constantly. And so then they had to work a ton to pay for the building and fixing it up. So they hired a nanny who happened to be a large black man who was a transvestite who did burlesque at night. So his name was Enos, and he was like he taught me everything. He brought me up. He was taught me how to shave and put the seat down, how to take a girl out, how to fist fight, all that stuff. So I'm learning these male role model lessons from a guy in a wig and high heels. People think comedy is just this thing you can put in a room. Like I get hired for weddings and all this stuff. I'm like, weddings? I'm up here talking about Puerto Ricans for half an hour. Like, what are you, crazy? You got to hire me for the best day of your life or whatever? Like, you're an idiot. Comedy, they just think like, oh, we'll put this human in a room. He'll make noises and we'll all laugh. But that's not how it works, Like music, it kind of can be atmospheric and play and people can feel it and talk. But comedy is this weird, it's almost interactive. It's like a conversation. So you can't do it without the right setting. But I've done so many gigs at corporations and roasts and all this stuff. People hire you for dinner parties and we'll have a comic. And then you go in there and they're horrified.
Yeah. So have you done, there's a thing going on now with not house parties, but house shows. And it's people, generally moneyed people that will go play and there'll be 40 or 50 people there and we'll get paid well, but it's sort of a stripped down acoustic thing.
Yeah.
Folks and, kiss the babies and sign a few things. Is there a thing like that in comedy at all?
Oh yeah. And it's always horrible, but yeah, at least like you say, the money's good. So you suck it up and you're counting the minutes. You're like, all right, they want me on stage for 45 minutes. I'm 42 minutes in. Here we go. 41 minutes to go. 40 minutes to go. 28 minutes to go. And then you just get that paycheck and get the hell out of there. Maybe get a couple of drinks.
How sick are you of the term cancel culture? You hear everything. And I know it's a real thing, but I think guys like you have figured out that most people don't agree with the loudest people on the internet. There's a lot of people.
I hope you're right.
I really think that like everybody I talk to, nobody agrees or gets offended about the things that they're supposed to. Well, maybe not everybody, but most people.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of people want to hear good shit talking and want to laugh, and they don't get their feelings hurt as easily as people think they should,
Yeah, I completely agree. And I hope you're right. I think there's a lot of people, it's kind of in a weird way, cowardly and oddly conservative. Like I'll do a college gig and these kids are like, hey, you can't say that. I'm like, what are you, the dad from Footloose? What's going on here? I thought you guys were young and fun and liberal and having a good time. But no, you're like, hey, buddy. And you're like, you want to defund the police? You act like cops. You can't say this. You can't do this. You can't think this. Like, it's very ironic. So I think it's young people, like, trying to stand for something and pretend to matter. Like, if you really cared, go help people. I'm telling zingers up here for peanuts. Like, you think coming at me or my tweets is going to solve the world? Like, go help somebody if you really give a shit, but you don't. And it's just quick and easy. And they get a little jolt of hero and activism or whatever it is. And look, nothing wrong being an activist. Great. There's a lot of problems out there, but go to those. this guy, this ain't the problem. I'm just an insecure dweeb trying to get a chuckle. And you'll notice it's rarely like people who are actually struggling don't give a shit because they got problems they got to deal with. They're trying to pay the bills and feed their kids and, stay safe or whatever. It's a very privileged thing to be like, hey, that fat joke was problematic. You're like, what? What are you talking about? Like we got school shootings. We got Flint doesn't have clean water. Like women are trying to get this and paid the same and be treated this. Like, this is your issue, this fat joke, you fucking loser. And it usually you can tell it stems from something internal. They're like, I'm fighting this fight because of so-and-so. It's not actually the fat joke. It's something within them. I just watched the Patrice O'Neal documentary, and he trashes women for most of his career. Wow. And then they show his daughter. Well, I didn't even know he had a daughter. And she's
I didn't either until I saw the movie.
Yeah. And she's like, he made fun of my giant forehead, and it made me feel better, and it gave me confidence about my forehead. And I mean, you think back to like gym class when you had the special needs kid. Nobody fucked with that kid because it was real. So you're kind of like, okay, they fuck with me. They make fun of me. They bust my balls. So that means they kind of respect me. They don't respect this other kid because they're actually worried about him.
Yeah.
So like I'd rather get my balls busted than not, because that actually means there's a problem.
That you're
you see what I'm
retarded.
saying? Does that make sense?
It means you're retarded.
Yeah, exactly.
Short of saying something illegal, you gotta let it all go. And, you gotta let idiots talk. If they're running stupid theories or whatever, then the majority of the people, let them talk. Don't shut them up. Let them talk. They're just going to expose how stupid they are. If you're an ignorant racist, let him go.
Right. Yeah. Let him go. And all my black friends are like, I'd rather know that he's a racist. I'd rather get it out there. I don't want him hiding in the bushes, pretending to be for me, but yet he's doing this shit on the side. But no, I completely agree. Like flat earthers. I love flat earthers. I love that there's these idiots out there who actually think that, and they're allowed to think that. We shouldn't lock them up. They're just retarded. So let them live. That's their right.
Ari Shaffir. So we were talking about, I was like, we should upload this song, the Ari song, just to have it on a presence on Spotify. Hilarious. And then we were like, well, but technically,
absolutely, yeah.
But we were like, but technically, Ari
owns
his song. So I was like, what if Ari started a band or a solo project and just call it like the Ari Shaffir Band? You don't write anything, you don't record anything, you don't produce anything. This is your first single, and you'd be the only band that has no input in their output whatsoever. You don't have to do anything.
That would be interesting. Like gorillas aren't actual people in their band.
They aren't.
But I would take it one step further, you're saying.
One step further.
I wouldn't have any association at all with my band.
Just your name. And you don't even have to perform. You neither write nor perform nor produce your own music.
That'd be great. And put on concerts and just not even come to the city. Just like green screen myself over like the St. Louis Arches and just be like, I'm here or something.
Yeah, maybe a hologram thing like they've been doing.
Yeah. Are they still doing that? I thought they finished a Biggie and Buck.
So what kind of music?
Actually, did not think about this till right now, but I hooked up with a chick in Dallas once. And she goes, you want to smoke out of, Willie Nelson gave me a vaporizer. You want to smoke out of it? And I was like, yeah, all right. And then, we smoked out of Willie Nelson's vaporizer. I don't know.
Really?
Maybe you did.
It's not a great story, but that was the end of it. Yeah. Dude, I went to Bonnaroo, actually. That's at Tennessee. I went to Bonnaroo and Dan Soder met me, and he's like, he met me like, I went the day before, and he was like, Dan Soder's a comedian. He's like, what do you need? Anything from, I just landed at the airport. I'm like, and then I was walking around all those Pebbles and stuff with Chuck Taylor's. I'm like, get me some insoles. I am crushing my feet wearing actual shoes here.
Yeah.
When was that? Last year or the year before?
No, it was like 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Is that the one you were?
Dan and I went. We went one year. Me, Dan, Big J, Michelle Wolf, Mark Norman, a bunch of comics. We just got booked there. It was so much fun. But Dan had this awful girlfriend who kept bossing him around every time. I was like, I'm going to check out Slayer. She goes, well, I didn't agree to go to Slayer. It was just so dumb. She was the worst. And so we were like, Dan, let's go back next year. We'll get an RV. Let's actually have a good Bonnaroo. And that's what we did. We had a great Bonnaroo.
It never works to take the significant other on the road with you. It never does.
Mm-mm.
We've had band members do that. They meet up and it's like, first of all, you're not going to have any fun. Second of all, they're not going to have any fun because unless you're playing in a band,
it's not fun.
Fucking horrible. You sit around for hours and do nothing.
Oh yeah. The only way to do it is, hey, my tour ends on Saturday night, come Sunday morning, or and then we'll hang out. We'll stay in New Orleans for another week, just you and I.
Yeah.
While everybody else goes home. That's about it.
Because people think tour buses or whatever, or hanging out backstage is cool until they do it, and they're like, "What? This? You're just gonna sit here?" And like, "Well, yeah, we play in like a couple hours. I'm gonna eat a chicken wing, and we're gonna go play." And they're like,
no. Yeah, we're gonna.
Dude, every girlfriend I've had, I finally realized it was like, why don't you take me to the Comedy Store? Why don't you take me to hang out? You always go there, and it's like, it's not that fun. And then finally, I'm like, oh, I'll just show you. And then they come, and then it's like, after 3 times, like, it's just you and your dumb friends talking about stand up the same way over and over again. I'm like, yeah. Like, all right, I'll meet you after.
Pretty much the deal.
Yeah, how many times?
Dude, I've seen Rogan get too drunk, and it's like, and then he'll start like, he used to do like an hour set, and then like another hour of questions, and then he would just like during that hour of questions, when he was like bomb, he would like occasionally repeat a joke, and then everyone kind of like look around, like to the first like, is this a joke that you're repeating it? And then but he had just no memory, and it was like, it was so much fun, but only if it's in the second hour, not like right off the bat.
Right.
Yeah, I just took off to I centered on Southeast Asia. I figured a continent. It was like cheap. I didn't know how long I'd be gone. So I was like, Southeast Asia. I got some visas of places I needed to get ahead of time and research the other ones that you could go at the airport when you land. And then like I got my flight like 2 days before. I just went to look at the weather report, like which had the most sunshine. And it was Myanmar. So I bought a one-way ticket to Myanmar, Burma. And then like, yeah, they just stayed for months. It was fucking great, man. I stayed in Burma for like almost a month, like almost like 3.5, 4 weeks. And then went from there to Thailand, to Vietnam, Cambodia, Vietnam, just all over Southeast Asia, East Timor, Indonesia. It was great.
Did you have any contact whatsoever with the homeland?
No, I turned my phone off. I gave my friend my password to like Instagram and Twitter at the time, my email, and saying like, I don't want it, but just like keep it for me. Don't I changed the password. I just went like this to like change my password. I went like that to the keyboard, and then I pressed cut and paste and send to her. So I couldn't even find it. And then and changed the password for my email too. So I couldn't even recover it. So I couldn't even get into my email. I intentionally locked myself out. And then called an Uber, and then turned my phone off, threw it in my drawer, and then got in the Uber and went to JFK. Like I printed out my ticket, and then that was it. Couldn't get on anything.
So you left the phone at home.
Yeah. It was great. It was so freeing. God damn, it was so much fun.
Was it weird at first? It had to be a little bit weird.
Yeah. My first I landed in Yangon, which is they all renamed all the cities in Burma. They renamed it Myanmar because they had all these human rights violations. So the government figured out if you just rename everybody, then no one will come after us. They're coming after a non-existent country. Yeah. They moved the capital to the middle of nowhere too. It was so smart. They're like, there's all these protests. Imagine if like protests in Washington, DC, and they're like, all right, we moved the capital to about 2.5 hours outside KC. People are like, oh, I mean, I'm not going there. So
in the middle of nowhere.
They did. Yeah. So it was Rangoon, the old Rangoon. It was Yangon. I landed there and was like, and then like I got a hotel the first night, and then I was like, all right, like I stay in a hostel. After that, I used their internet to find a hostel, and then and then I just like walked outside, put my stuff in, then walked outside, and I was just like scared and lonely, like real scared and lonely, and I was like, I made a mistake. And I thought about going home like the next day because I had a one-way ticket. So I'm like, I can go home anytime. And I'm not poor. I can afford a ticket back. It's a few $100. But when I left, I was letting Duncan Trussell, this comedian that I started with in LA, who's now a Southerner. He's now back in North Carolina where he belongs.
I love Duncan.
He was just moving to New York. And I was like, well, why do you look for a place? Like, I'm leaving for a while. Stay at my place. You can stay as long as you want. And man, if he wasn't at my place, I think I would have just gotten on the plane back, and I would have just like stayed like undercover for like 2 weeks, not told anyone I was back, so I didn't have to feel like I was walking my tail between my legs.
Right.
But he was there, so I was like, fuck it. And then after like another day, I made like a friend at a hostel.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, okay, this is not so scary. It's just foreign, but it's not so scary. And then found out all my xenophobia wasn't like, there's some places that are dangerous, but Myanmar in particular was, but yeah, it was safe as shit.
Sorry, I had another lag. I think it was probably equally weird coming back.
Yeah. And I just did it too. I've been in Ecuador for 6 months, and it's the same thing. Everybody says like good morning, good afternoon. Same things all over Southeast Asia. Pretty much anywhere you pass anybody, it's their translation of good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You just say it. You mid conversation. You're just like good afternoon, and you just go back to your conversation. People just say it to each other. And the last time and this time, I spent a week just trying to get someone to say hello back to me. Not even to start it, just like hi, and then they just like. And then keep walking. And I'm like, come on, I'm a human. I'm 2 feet away from you. I greeted you. Good morning. And they just, oh yeah, they're the best for that. Dude, I got 1 year, that first year at Bonnaroo, that was my first like real festival. I'd been to outside lands. Those, I call them 11 o'clock festivals. There's like 11 o'clock festivals and there's overnight festivals.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's also like free day festivals where it's just like, you know, the city's putting on something in the park on a Sunday only, but that doesn't really count. But like, so I've been to the 11 o'clock festivals, and then Bonnaroo was, but like I went and got, I think 2 ounces of mushrooms for like all the comedians. I like put it out on Twitter. It was easier when I was like smaller. I could like really just put out calls for drugs and like under the radar enough, but high enough where I could get a response, but under where I wouldn't get in trouble. So some dude from Chicago was coming down. He's like, I can hook you up. I can get some, bury at my wheel well. And then, yeah, I was like, yeah, I'll take like 2/8 maybe. And then he was like, I can get more. I was like, oh, maybe half an ounce. And he's like, yeah, honestly, dude, however much you need. And I was like, all right, I'll figure it. It's so cheap. Shrooms are so cheap. So I was like, get two ounces. And then I got the whole Bonnaroo comedy. It was just like, people would come up to me and like, hey, Ari, I was like, I know what you're here for. Go ahead. And just like, everybody's like, yay. And just running off. Oh, it was so much fun. I did the same thing at Glastonbury. All my friends who came from London was like, we'll bring the Coke. And I'm like, and it's just not like Scotland's more their shrooms are, but in London and stuff, they're just like, it's just not that big a shroom place. They're just booze and Coke and pills too. But like, yeah, so I got like an ounce or 2 of mushrooms. And they started calling me the shaman, and it was just like, here, everybody, my whole group. It was so much fun. They're just the best for it. It's a giant playground. It's all safe. You can't go, you can't wander into traffic. Nothing can get you. And there's a few medics around who aren't going to ask any questions. They're just going to help you.
Right. So that,
so you just go lie in the grass somewhere.
Like that situation you just described. It's fun when you have a group at a show like that. You're all on shrooms, and then everybody kind of breaks off and then comes back together, and you kind of report back in on the shit going on.
Where were you? Oh my God, what happened? Did you see so and so? No, it was the best band I've ever seen in my life. It's exactly. Like, okay. Yeah, all my friends, we all took it. We got ready. We're on the stage because Big J figured out, because he used to tour with Korn. And he was like, hey, we can get like artist stuff. We have access to artist stuff. Like, well, won't they know? And he goes, no, there's no knowing. We are artists. We're performing here. Like, but not really. He goes, no, yes, really. We have, this is what the badge says. It's not fake. So we're on side stage at Alabama Shakes, and like, it was all just kicking in. And I was like, sweet. I was like, excuse me for a second. And I was just like, I got to hit the grass. And then I remember hearing Kendrick Lamar, who went on after them from like far away. Yeah, you're just laying there. Every once in a while, you'll feel a flashlight in your eyes, and you just have to like give a thumbs up to whoever's like, "Are you dead?" You're just laying there. You're just like, "I'm good," and then it's like, "Yeah," and then they're like, "All right, that guy's good." You have an opinion on something. Let's say it's something innocuous. It always helps me understand things. I didn't like coleslaw for a long time. No one's gonna fucking try to get me for that. I just didn't like coleslaw, and then tried it a few times, just didn't like it, and then one day I started like, "Oh, I kind of do like it a little bit," and then now I like coleslaw. But I was never on the record anywhere for not liking coleslaw. No one's going to call me a hypocrite for now eating coleslaw. No one's going to have a timeline of me showing that I don't like coleslaw. So same shit. You put it on there. It's on forever. So you can't like slowly let your opinion alter and change just naturally. and then you see what you wrote. So you're like, I have to try to stick to that thing. I'm not liking coleslaw as my identity. So it's like, even if you do like, I got to eat it quietly now because everyone will call me a fucking backtracker. It's so weird. It's so weird. They're all just fucking dorks. Dude, I remember like there was, for a while I was like, at least Jews aren't joining in with this, like, woe was me stuff. And for a while we really weren't, you know, because we always had kind of the trump card in terms of like, historically, you know.
Sure.
Or maybe you guys don't get taught that in school, but like it was just like whatever, some European stuff. But like but like we weren't doing it, and then it started. I saw it start about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and it was all like, it sucks to be Jewish. Everyone's, and this one girl I remember, she read some blog and she goes, I have to take my Star of David and I have to put it under my shirt because I'm in fear of my life every day. And it's like, well, why are you wearing it at all then? Legitimately, if you're in fear of your life, you're still going to wear a necklace that has nothing, no like religious value. Like, it's like, just don't wear it. If you really fear for your life, why would you be wearing that necklace out, even tucked in? Are you fucking nuts? Like, you're lying. You're just lying. You're making up something grander than it is. And that's who's leading the rebellion cause against you or against anybody. And you want to be like, get out of here. But they're like gnats. They don't get out of there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, most people don't give a shit. And misinterpretation too. There was some, I love this one because it kind of proves it always. There was some sculpture in some college. There was a woman sitting reading a book, a bronze sculpture on a bench, and a man standing over her in this pose, just like, kind of like, whoa, I'm gonna fall. Kind of like this, you know, like talking to her. And so everyone's like, oh, the man's not letting her go. She just wants to read her book, and we got to take the statue down because it's about like mansplaining, and it's showing how like this woman's trying to read and better herself, but this man's like talking to her and not like letting her like grow as a human, and just like clearly is not reading her body language. And they ended up like, it was at some college, and they took it down. So okay, they told the artist that they took this down because it was like this thing that promoted mansplaining and showed how like men only want women to talk to them and they don't respect them at all. And the artist was like, yeah, that was my point. I was trying to show that. And he's like, they took it down? That's what I was trying to say, that it's a problem we have to correct. And he's like, yeah, it was like, they got it and didn't, like, what? He was just like stunned by it. He was like,
it's hard to wrap your head around. They got it, but they don't get it.
Yeah. So it's like part of you wants, and then what sucks is you see another artist getting it, right? You see somebody getting it for something. And most people are like, that's not even a thing. And if you try to defend them, it just sort of makes it worse. But if you just ignore it, then everyone feels like you're being abandoned. So it's just this real tough position for other people. Like, I don't know how to like end it. It's so weird. I know what the answer is with all of it. But then the negative is, next time you write that word in a lyric, you're not gonna be able to like think clearly and be like, this is what I want to say or not. You're thinking about the reaction, and
yeah,
maybe now you're doubling down. You're like, fuck them, they can't tell. So like maybe you would have edited it out, now you won't. Or maybe you would have used it, now you won't. It's just like now you're not thinking for yourself anymore, which is like the worst thing artistically to have happen.
Tom Papa. Did I hear that your first show was with Greg Giraldo was on that same bill?
Yeah, that's when I met Greg. I walked in. It was upstairs from the New York Comedy Club, which is upstairs from this Western bar in New York, like on 23rd Street. And it's since moved. But so you walk through this Western bar, and then you go upstairs, and there was this comic Gary on stage. He was hosting. My friends were like the only people in the audience. It was like my group, which was probably like 6 people, and then another 2 maybe in the room. That was it. And Greg Giraldo was sitting there waiting to go on. A little baby-faced Giraldo, no beard, nervous, so nervous and sweaty. And I was like, he kind of like scared me because I was like, what's going to happen? Like, why are you so nervous?
Maybe I should be sweating. And yeah.
Yeah. I was like, we're going to do this. It's going to go great. And he was just like a wreck. And we became friends immediately and just kind of hit it off. And we were friends ever since.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite. And I heard that he worked kind of clean at the beginning. I forget who was telling me that. I was like,
yeah, kind of clean. Yeah. Like he never really had a lot of like real sexual stuff. He did not want to censor himself in any way. He thought that was kind of a passe to worry about bad words. he really didn't think he thought that the culture had moved beyond that, and he wasn't going to try and censor himself. But that we had that conversation, it probably was a little bit of a transformation of him thinking maybe he should work a little clean or try. We all kind of figure that stuff out early on. But his jokes, he had some funny jokes about these are like in the open mic days. His big jokes were about the Catholics and the Protestants, and that the only difference between them in Ireland, like the only difference between them is that the Catholics had to kneel during church. They had to kneel and stand, and then he'd do an Irish accent. You kneeling bastards! Kneel, sit, stand. Kneel, sit, stand. And he would kill with that one. And then he had a very funny one about, do you remember the show Fantasy Island?
Oh, yeah.
With Little Tattoo was the little guy, and he had some joke about that, and he would do tattoo. It's so funny to think of Greg Giraldo doing tattoo imitations, but they killed.
And he was a smart guy, wasn't he?
Too smart. I really think that's what kind of did him in. I think he was one of those people that saw things too clearly, and his brain never turned off. And he needed relief from that, I think. And I think that's what started him trying to slow his brain down, with other with other substances and stuff. And, I have the gift of being just dumb enough to be happy.
Right.
And he didn't have that.
A happy guy.
Yeah, he didn't have that. Too smart's dangerous.
He didn't suffer fools very well either. It seemed like he was just on that level of, like you're talking about, super intelligence, and just can't understand why things are the way they are.
Yeah, and he was courageous. He was brave. He was brave in his soul. Like, he would confront people if people gave him shit. If I remember, like the handful of times that there was trouble at the Comedy Cellar out on the street where a fight broke out, and something happened, like we'd be talking and he would run right to it. Like and I'd be like, should we check out who's involved first before we go out there? And he was very honest, very brave, and very smart.
Your personality seems to be a bit different than that whole, I'm generalizing here, but that whole New York comedy scene. Especially back then, was rough edge, ball busting, all that kind of stuff. Did you feel kind of out of place with your personality being around those guys, or was it just we're all comics, we do this? I mean, did you feel like, talking about Greg maybe going a little cleaner, did you feel that you needed to edge anything up outside of your personality when you started? Was that something you've
a little bit? I always got a sense that I wasn't as cool as a lot of those guys. Not so much my peers, but the people who were like right before me, who were like the class ahead of me, like Dave Attell and Kevin Brennan and Nick DiPaolo and like that.
Colin Quinn.
But, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call Colin cool, but I would call the rest of them.
I gotcha.
But I didn't. A huge thing is, when you're trying to develop your own thing, is the most important thing is to not care about what anybody else is doing. And
that's the hardest thing to do as a youngster too.
Very difficult, because you're around them. You want to be liked by them. You want to be a part of the club. You're watching them kill. You want to do it too. And you're seeing what works. And should I be trying that? And it takes a while. And it's hard, but it really, and I went through a period, not long, but a period at the Comedy Cellar where I was trying to be a little edgier, like I was telling dirtier jokes, or was like leaning against the wall, like smoke. Like I didn't smoke, but like, be trying to be one of those guys,
right?
Not give a shit kind of an attitude, something that wasn't me. Like it was Attell or Nick DiPaolo, and the audience knows immediately that that's not you. So thankfully it didn't work for the week or two that I was going down there.
Maybe I'll go back to what I was doing.
Yeah. Like even if, like, I don't really curse that much in my everyday life. So even if I were to drop like F-bombs in my set, you could just feel the audience be like, "Aw, look at you trying to."
Isn't that cute?
Trying to curse, yeah.
Have you ever had to do a show with no audience?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, plenty
it's horrible,
of them.
right? What was it like for you?
So bad. One of the worst ones I played Rutgers University.
Yep.
And it was in a food court. Like it was late at night in a food court where there was like a Pizza Hut on one side, like a cafeteria, and then on the other side was like a Taco Bell and like whatever the school stuff was. And there was no one in there. There was literally no one in there. And they said, well, it starts at 8 or 9, whatever it was, and you have an hour. I was like, really? Can you just pay me and let me go home? And they were like, nope. So I just got up there, and as kids would roam in to get a snack in between studying for their finals, there's this man on stage desperately, hey, what are you doing? Where are you?
Yeah, I was about to
Where
say,
are you from?
Probably makes crowd work kind of difficult.
Yeah, nice shirt. Like they're being assaulted by this inappropriate person on stage.
One-on-one attack.
Yeah. They were like, no one stayed. Everyone just get left. It was horrible. And the first movie I got was Analyze That with Robert De Niro.
Yeah,
I got
not a bad first hit right there.
Yeah, it was. That was really exciting because I went to do the audition and I got the call back and got to go back for the second audition, and they met me outside and they're like, okay, so you're gonna read the scene. It's like you're like a fiance in a jewelry store and you're buying the ring from the clerk, and so you go in there. Harold Ramis is the director. He'll be there. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, and you'll read the scene. You and Bobby will read the scene. And I was like, okay. And I thought Bobby was like the script assistant or the temp or whatever. And I walk in and Bobby is Robert De Niro.
Wow.
I was like, oh, gee. So like, we start reading the scene, and I'm trying not to be nervous. And I've got these two legends right there, and I'm like, hey. And then he lost his place in the script. I'm like, really, like, and he's fumbling around, and it went from this weird feeling of being in awe of this legend, and then like De Niro's gonna make me lose the scene.
Dude, you're screwing up my audition.
Dude, you're screwing up. Who is this guy? Could someone replace Bobby, please? Somebody please replace Bobby. And then I got to host, as a young comic, I got to host Woodstock 99.
Oh, wow.
They brought a bunch of comics. I think Florentine actually might have been up there.
Before you get into that, how is it opening for musical acts like that?
We weren't opening. We were just, it was Rich Voss. Rich Voss was on the smaller stage.
Oh, so a side stage kind of thing.
Yeah. And I was on the main stage.
Gotcha.
And it was just literally, they didn't know they just needed someone to go out and say, Kid Rock is next, stuff like that.
I got you.
And they asked a couple of us to do it. So I got this crazy gig of like, before James Brown came out to start the whole thing out. I'm pretty new, and I'm just out there like, you guys ready? And 100,000 people throwing water bottles at you and shoes and Kid Rock and Rage Against the Machine and Metallica. It was insane. And I remember it was several days, and the last thing on like the Saturday night was Metallica. And Metallica came in. All of us that were hanging on the stage during the Fugees and all these other bands, and we got to like sit on the wings. Metallica came, and they're like, get off the stage. Everybody out of here. If you're not Metallica, if you're not in the family, you're out. And they just kicked everybody out, and we couldn't, and they just went up there and just played massive Metallica dark music into the night, and everybody was just like frazzled and went to bed, and it's just like under this Metallica cloud. And then Sunday morning, the first band up was Willie, and just comes out there, good morning everybody, and just the little guitar, and it was just peaceful Sunday, and just woke everybody up and got the whole place going. And it was just filled with good vibes and good morning and just good. It was like, oh, it was such relief. And I got to sit on the side of the stage and watch the whole thing. Oh, it was beautiful. Such a beautiful moment. I'll never forget it. The power of him just with his guitar against the machine of that thing, was just it was impressive. And then my sister got to go on the bus once when he was doing. She's a big into farming, and she runs this organization called City Green that helps develop farms and give produce and stuff to inner city kids and stuff. It's like this cool organization in northern New Jersey. Cool. And somehow during some farming kind of thing,
Farm Aid,
they got.
Probably.
I don't know if it was Farm Aid. I feel like it was something else.
Oh.
But Willie's farm adjacent always. So I guess I don't know. Either way, this is a very jealous story that she ended up on the bus and got to smoke a little and
very cool.
Yeah, much cooler than me standing on side of the stage.
Steve Cantwell.
He said, "Hey, I'm going to be back for Christmas on this one particular Christmas. All of my soldiers are trying this stuff. It's like it's not marijuana, but it's like a synthetic version of marijuana that's legal in all head shops. So maybe I know the Army doesn't test for it. Maybe that's not against the Mormon Church either. So if you ever wanted to try marijuana, this is maybe where we should start." So he gives me instructions about everything that I need to get. He doesn't tell me the name of the stuff that I need to get. So I just go into a head shop, buy all of this paraphernalia, and then I say, and I need that stuff. It's not marijuana, but it's perfectly legal. And they go, salvia?
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, yeah, that could be it. So they sell me not synthetic marijuana. They sell me basically a really powerful psychoactive drug and send me back to back home for Christmas. I wrap all this up. We have Christmas morning together, and then he and I decide that while we're waiting for the kids to finish playing with their games and before lunch, we decide we'll duck down into his gun room and try to give this synthetic marijuana a try. So we go down there, we fill up the bong with icy water. I put this salvia concentrate in the bowl, and I hit it with the microtorch that I had gotten. And just, I go first because I'm trying to prove to him that I'm not a pussy, because I'm just this Mormon guy and he's this Army Ranger, and I'm kind of in my head trying to prove that I'm worthy of his friendship, I think is the reason I go first. And so I hit this bong of salvia, the very first drug I'd ever had of any kind. I'd never had anything stronger than ibuprofen for 40 years.
No cigarettes?
No caffeine?
No cigarettes, no caffeine, nothing but tap water and milk, really, where essentially that's the Mormon stricture. So I hit this bong full of salvia and fall through the floor of his gun room. And there's like this short sensation of falling. And then I come up and I'm on the deck of this tiny water ski boat in the middle of a lake. And it's not Christmas. It's like summertime. And there's a bunch of guys around me and I'm coughing. Can't catch my breath. But it's like this whole other world. It's just as real as the world I had left. And I'm like, I didn't know what to expect from marijuana. And that was not at all what they show in the movie.
No.
But I was like, this is bananas, because this is a really strong hallucination, but there was nothing psychedelic about it. It was just normal as normal can be, except that I'm on this sailboat. I'm on this water ski boat wearing a life preserver and coughing and talking to these guys. And they're saying stuff like, man, we thought you drowned. You had your face in the water. By the time we got back to the boat, we got back to you with the boat. We thought that you drowned. And I just keep laughing about how, I'm in Alaska and it's Christmas time and I live in Alaska and none of you are real. And this is a hallucination and I'm on drugs. And so they look at each other and they get worried as shit because I'm their friend and I'm not talking right. So they think that I have brain damage. So they just race to the dock. They don't even put the boat on the trailer. They just side tie it to the dock. And we all pile into their pickup truck and they take me to an emergent care.
Now, wait a minute. Do you recognize these guys?
No. I've never seen them before ever in my life. They all tell me that they've known me my entire life and that I've always lived in Tyler, Texas, and this is Tyler, Texas, and we all live in Tyler, Texas, and just hold still. We'll get you to the hospital soon. And I'm laughing hysterically.
Now, are you okay? Are these guys your age?
Yeah.
40 years old?
Yeah,
Okay,
40-year-olds.
When you look down at your body, is it your same body that you have in the other world?
Yes. Yeah, and my name is Steve Cantwell, and they've known me as Steve Cantwell for most of the last 40 years.
Okay, go on. So you're in the emergency room, and you just can't stop laughing.
I can't stop laughing because it's so real. I mean, there's magazines and there's pictures in the magazines. There's CNN is on in the waiting room, and it's just like regular. But I'm in Tyler, Texas, and it's summer, and so I think it's going to wear off quickly. I don't know how long synthetic marijuana is supposed to last, but it goes on and on and on. And so I finally get in to see the healthcare professional, and they test all my reflexes, test my blood oxygen, just do the normal, almost drowned kind of stuff. And they said, my friends are like, he doesn't remember anything. He's got amnesia. And she says, well, he probably just got his bell rung, and true medical amnesia is really rare. So just take him home. He hasn't got a concussion. Just put him to bed. And if he doesn't start remembering things tomorrow, give me a call and I'll recommend a specialist. So they take me home to this shit ass 1-bedroom apartment on a farm road, and take me in, and using keys that were in my jeans pockets, open up the door, and they have to get back to take care of the boat. So they just kind of dump me in the door of my 1-bedroom apartment.
Did they tell you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew that. No, I didn't know their names when I saw them, but over the course of the next little while, I got to know their names very well. But I just kind of kick around this 1-bedroom apartment, and there's like pictures of me and like a family that I don't remember. I had apparently a dad and a mom and a sister who had died in a car accident when I was in high school. And there was pictures of me in the yearbooks that were on the shelf. And all of the things in this apartment were obviously things that I would probably buy, but I have no memory of this whatsoever. So I end up just sitting on the couch waiting for the salvia to wear off.
Right.
Thumbing through old yearbooks of a high school that I didn't go to. There's pictures of me with some of them with guys that I was in the boat with earlier that day. So, it kind of corroborates their story. And I just kind of chuckle to myself about how fucking long this is lasting. And I drift off to sleep, expecting fully that I would come back to my life in Alaska. Well, that didn't happen. The next morning I wake up and there's pounding on my door, and it's one of the guys from the night before, and he comes in and says, hey, you didn't show up for work. And I'm like, work? This is a salvia. So he loads me into his truck and takes me down the road to this giant apple farm where I have worked most of my adult life, apparently. And he and I supervise migrant labor, and we're hot in the middle of the apple harvest. And I stand there with a clipboard and tell anybody who will listen that none of them are real, and that, I'm Mormon and I live in Alaska and I'm in the witness protection, and I just, finished building my house. And even as I'm saying it, that story sounds more and more preposterous, because they're all saying, like, we've known you your entire life. You've never been to Alaska, bro. You were Presbyterian. You're not Mormon, and you just. So we argue back and forth like that. After a weird, they take me back to my 1-bedroom apartment. I don't feel like coming and hanging out with them. They're going to go drink beer, and I'm Mormon, so I'm just like, I don't want any part of that. So they drop me off back at my apartment, where I watch interdimensional cable TV for the next few hours, and then fall asleep again, hoping that I'll end up back in Alaska. I'm starting to get worried now. I'm thinking maybe I'm in a coma in Alaska. Maybe I died and this is like limbo. I'm starting to get really serious worries.
Yeah.
By night number 2, wake up the next morning, pounding on my door. You didn't show for work again. He takes me to work again. And that goes on every single day. I live every single minute of every single day for 8 years in Tyler, Texas. So everybody in town has known me my entire life. They've all heard that I had a terrible water skiing accident and I have brain damage, and that I can't remember anybody. So everybody that comes up to me at the grocery store, like, hangs onto my arm and talks real slow and real loud. And I'm just like, I tell them slowly that they don't exist and that I'm on a salvia trip and I don't understand what's happening, but I live in Alaska and I'm Mormon and I've got a whole family there that I'm trying to get back to, and they just kind of look sympathetically into my eyes and try to just give me space to go through this crazy fucking thing that I'm going through. So I try everything. I like, the internet exists at this point. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm Googling everything about myself. I Google the murder trial, because that's probably the most public thing that to that point, there's no record of the murder trial. There's no record of Steve Cantwell in Alaska, which is not weird because I was kind of up there hiding, but there's no record of my family or anything like that. Yeah. But there is evidence that Steve Cantwell lived in Tyler, Texas for most of his life. And there's stuff in the newspaper about my family's accident when I was in high school. And there's pictures of me standing there looking grief-stricken. And there's just every evidence is that I grew up in Tyler, and it fucks with my head. But I know all this stuff about the Mormon Church, and my friends love to get me talking about the Mormon Church, because I'm unstumpable as far as Mormon trivia goes. So I start Googling stuff about the Mormon Church, trying to figure out how I know so much about the Mormon Church, and eventually end up convincing myself that the Mormon Church is baloney, just from the things that I saw on the internet while I was in Tyler, looking up old newspapers, because the Mormon Church didn't happen 2,000 years ago. It happened not even a couple hundred years ago, and it happened in a time of newspapers. So you can Google that shit, and with an open mind can convince yourself that it's not true. So that happened to me while I was in Tyler.
Okay.
So at any point in this time while you're on that trip, were you thinking, maybe they are right, maybe I do have brain damage, maybe, or were you still just in the back of your mind able to hold it together going, something's not right?
So for the first 4 years, I push everyone away. Like I'm trying with all my might. I miss my family. I miss my children. I consider suicide as a possible way to get back to my family. I go out to the lake sometimes thinking it's some kind of a vortex, I'm boggled at how to get back to Alaska. But then right around the 4-year mark, I start to I have like a kind of a heart to heart with my friend. And he basically explains to me that, this whole town's trying to be my friend and I keep pushing them away. So then rather than going to the store and when people come up to me that I went to grade school with and telling them that they're not real, I just start telling them I had a water skiing accident and I have brain damage. And I don't remember you, but, tell me your name and I'll try to remember it. And then, we'll just go from here. So I started to try to remember people's names and just kind of start to build a relationship with them from that moment forward. And I think that's the moment when I kind of accepted the fact that I had brain damage and that I didn't have a family in Alaska and that I wasn't Mormon and all these things about being in the witness protection and stuff, that seemed fantastical to me. The more I talked about it, and it made more sense that I had lived kind of a more simple life. I'd never married. I'd worked for the same family farm since I was a kid, and I was probably going to work for them till the day that I died. And I'd had the same group of friends since high school. And so I just started to kind of try to reacquaint myself with who were around me and loved me much. And I've been very patient with the fact that I kept telling them that they were imaginary. And so I think I went from missing my family to grieving the fact that I couldn't be with my family, to realizing that my family was probably imaginary and some concoction that had happened in my brain in the brief amount of time that I was unconscious and underwater. And then kind of got to a place where I realized that my family didn't exist. And so then started to kind of build a life for myself in Tyler, started to hang out after work, realized I wasn't Mormon. So I started drinking a little bit of beer. Hold on a second, I gotta wait.
Okay. Now, did you, when you were in Googling things, did you try to Google your family too?
Yeah, none of it existed.
No. Okay.
Only my family in Tyler existed. That was the only thing that I could find.
But you could find info on the Church of Mormon.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, everything about the Mormon Church was the same. And so I started hanging out with my friends. I started kind of getting into my life there in Tyler. they played in this little garage band after work, and so I started hanging out with them. I had come into my apartment in Tyler the first night that they dumped me off there, and there was a ukulele on the couch, and I had never played the ukulele before, but I picked up the ukulele, and my fingers knew exactly where to go, so I could just by muscle memory, my fingers seemed to know like where to put my fingers on the strings to make chords and how to play the ukulele, and could play several cover songs just noodling around on the ukulele, though I still don't know the names of any of those chords. It's just I had muscle memory. And so I started bringing my ukulele, and we would play the ukulele. I would play the ukulele, and they would play the guitar and the bass and the drums, and we would just for fun just play music after work at this apple orchard. And after a few years we did a couple of parties and like a wedding or two, and played the fair once. So we just have a good time singing and playing the ukulele, and it was a good life.
Yeah,
good simple life.
And did you have a relationship in that world with anyone?
I didn't. No female relationship. Nobody wants to date the brain damaged guy.
Right.
And
I assume you weren't doing stand up in Tyler.
I was not doing stand up in Tyler, but that was probably the first time that in my adult life, other than preaching, that I'd gotten up in front of people and kind of experienced a crowd and having people clap and cheer, and I would talk a little bit in between songs, and that made me happy. And so it was kind of the first taste of performing, I think, in a non-religious way. And so that probably led me to stand up.
Okay, so how do we get out of Tyler, Texas?
Is there anything else interesting that happened over those 8 years that you can remember?
It was really dull.
Like, did you go see a show? Did you go see Tom Petty play or something, or anything?
No, I was pretty poor, and so I couldn't afford much. And I had spent a bunch of money during the first 4 years going around and traveling like to my old hometown and seeing if it looked the same, and just like doing a bunch of trips and like that, trying to find myself in some way. So no, didn't do much entertainment, but
so all of the laws of physics and everything like that, this is not psychedelic at all. It's just literally you just dropped in another life.
It's way more normal than my regular life. It was just, just bone scrapingly normal.
That's true.
There wasn't.
To be fair, if that was your story, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yeah. I had a job, and it was fine. I had a good time. Yeah.
It was fine. Worked at this apple orchard. Ask me anything about apples. So I was just, everything's fine. At the 8-year point, I'm walking across the park with a bucket of chicken to go join my friends at a picnic table. I can see them in the distance. And as I'm walking across the park, I get that same sensation of falling, and I fall through the ground, and there's that short sensation of falling. And I come out on the floor of his gun room. I'm having a full on seizure. I'm just like rah, 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 on the ground, and my ex-wife is behind me, hanging on to me, and the room is spinning, and it starts to slow down. And my ex-wife says, "Hang up the phone. I think he's coming out of it." And so my friend who's in the room with her hangs up the phone. Apparently he'd been dialing 911, and I stop my seizure, and I'm it's like magic. I'm back in my life in Alaska, and I throw my arms around her and cry, and throw my arms around my friend, or try to, and cry. And I'm laying in a puddle of my own piss, and it's still Christmas morning, and my kids are all like crowded around the gunroom door. What's wrong with Dad? And my wife is trying to cover for the fact that I've been down there doing drugs with my friend, which is not a very Mormon thing to do. So she's just like, "He fell down, just go upstairs. He's going to be okay." And she shoves me into their downstairs bathroom to shower the piss off of me. And my friend goes upstairs to go get me some sweatpants that I can borrow so that I can be presentable for the rest of Christmas. And I just pour this story out to my wife while I'm in the shower. And I'm just like, I thought you were imaginary, and I've been this other crazy place for 8 years. Total elapsed time, according to her, that I was on the floor having a seizure, 45 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
So I experienced all that detail, all that. I walked into that gun room as a Mormon preacher and came out as an atheist in 45 seconds.
Everybody who's been on is my favorite comedian.
Yes, mine too. It was great. And should we come clean the reason why we did the clip show?
JB fucked up and did not record the audio with Aaron Weber, which I still haven't told him. I need to tell him and ask him if he'll come back and do it.
Hopefully he'll do it. I mean,
Jim Florentine did another one with us.
there you go. And you fucked that one up, so we're even. Anyway, rate, review, all of that stuff, and we'll have a brand new one for you next week.
Don't be an asshole.
Enjoy your groceries. I know your mama's name.
We free Britney, y'all.